this is going to seem a little strange, but I can't help thinking about a story of one of my favorite encounters with God when it comes to fear and how it changed me. So I just want to tell you this story real quick. When my husband and I had our first house, it was a townhouse. We had it built. We were so proud. We moved in, and within a couple of days, I found out there was a mouse there. And as far as I know, I had never lived with a mouse. I saw the mouse and completely freaked out, like, oh my gosh, there's a mouse in the house. And I spent like 3 days running from this mouse. I saw it in the basement, so I would go to the top floor and refuse the basement. Then I saw it on the top floor, I'd go back to the basement. It was just chasing me around my house, right? And so one day, all of a sudden, my spirit just rose up and was like, wait a minute, I am running from a mouse. And so I had last seen it in the kitchen. I literally went to my steps, which was across from the kitchen, and I opened my front door. And I said, I'm going to command this mouse to leave my house because I don't need to be afraid of it. I have dominion in the word, right? And so I stood there and decided at that moment I was switching from the spirit of fear to love. Because when we talk about spirit, spirit is truth. So I was going on the operation of the
Mm,
truth of fear. Fear told me I had to run. Fear told me I
mm.
had to hide. Fear told me I was powerless. When I switched to the love of God, I remembered that I have some power. And so I literally opened my front door, I kid you not, and stood there and said, in the name of Jesus, by the power of him who changes the winds and the waves and who told the animals to walk into the ark two by two, I command you, mouse, come out and get out of my house. And do you know what? In 30 seconds, that mouse came running out from the refrigerator and was running toward the door.
Oh
But in
my
order to get
goodness.
to the door, it had to pass me. And so when it got close to me, I was like, ah, and I ran. And when I ran, the mouse ran back under the
What?
refrigerator. Did this 3 times. Every time the mouse came out when I commanded
Oh
it, and
my
every time I
goodness.
screamed when it got near me. And this is so important. This was such a huge lesson between me and God because even though I had rejected the spirit of fear, emotionally, I was not yet empowered. And in my mind,
Mm,
I was not yet calm enough to stand in the face of the thing. And so I think Christians struggle so much with whether if I'm feeling fear, I'm in the spirit or not. But you can be working from a spirit space and still experience some fear in your emotional space and in your thought life because there's so much going on. And there's a lot of things that we haven't experienced before, and we're being required to interact with something that we've only heard about. That was the first time I'd been in the same room with a mouse. I've only heard about this, but now I'm in space with it and I need to take an action. And so even when I rejected the rules of fear, emotionally and mentally, I still had to work through something that I'd never encountered before. And so here we are with a pandemic, we have protests and racial stress, and some of us, we've never encountered this before. And so we can continue to go back to our spirit to say, I believe God, I believe God, I believe God. But we also have to make room for us to evolve emotionally and in our thought life in order to have a full response that is fear free. Does that make sense? It's more than just
oh
spirit. And so I
yeah.
just want to encourage people with that this morning. Don't feel like your faith is failing because you feel fear. It's about recognizing that I'm
Yeah,
going to have to
I
get
love
through this
that.
both emotionally and in my thought life as well. I had
Mm,
faith in God, but I was scared of the mouse.
mm.
First John
Oh,
tells us that, right? Perfect love casts out fear. That is the antidote for fear. And I love what you said about remembering who we are in God. It's so important for us to start our day every day in his presence and get back into his presence as many times as necessary. Because I think the things that scare us the most, and sometimes people don't like to use the word fear. It's like, well, I'm concerned about that. Well, that needs to be watched. I need to keep my eye on that. We're the only reason we're not experiencing fear is because we think we're controlling the situation. But making sure that we spend that
mm.
time with God each day, centering ourselves on who in whom He is in us, and asking Him what to do about things that we think we know what to do about it. Sometimes we move and we're just like, well, I know what to do about this issue with my child. I know what to do about this issue with my marriage. I know what I need to do at ministry, but I don't want to assume that I know better than God. And so fear can get us moving and getting our hands all over things before we have checked with God. And so I would encourage people to identify those areas in their lives that they're concerned about because sometimes we just get up and start moving on that thing because we're trying to control it and manage it. I can say I'm not afraid of lions if they're in a cage and I'm holding a chair and a whip, I'm actually afraid of lions. I'm just feeling like I have my defenses in place, but I want to be able to stand in front of what scares me with nothing but the weapon of the word and prayer, knowing that God is enough. Now, God, tell me what to do. When you mentioned your friend whose daughter whose daughter is missing right now, I was taken straight back to my own childhood. My older sister, who had serious mental illness when I was growing up, she ran away a lot, and there were months, stretches where none of us knew where she was, where my parents didn't know where she was, and it was so much about pressing into the love of God in those moments. Like that's where that fear love dichotomy happens. God, I know you love us. I know you love her. Just believing in the power of his love, which allows me to stay in the presence of what's scaring me because we can't always run for it. We can't always just unplug. We might take a few hours off social media, but we can't disconnect from what's happening in the world. And in order for me to get to the power part, right, I want love and then I want power and a sound mind. All that's happening in the presence of what's scaring me. So what scared me, I switched to the rules of love, and then that gives me power and that calms my mind, but I'm still in the presence of what used to scare me. But now I'm not responding with fear. We can't always get away from it, but the love of God is the antidote. The love of God is the remedy. Remembering he loves me and then asking him to fill me with love for everyone involved in this situation. Because when love overflows in the presence of what's scary, we win.
Hi everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe today and you'll never miss a new upload. Thanks for being a part of our Better Together community.